everyone and welcome back to Exploring Art with Alessandro. Today we are going back to the prehistoric era to start our journey together. Now probably you are thinking, well, I don't remember any great masterpiece back then, and you're right, at least if we think from our modern point of view of painting or fresco. But once again, art is an evolution, and it would be a mistake if we don't start when everything started, when everything moved the first steps. Of course, today we are not going to talk about styles and techniques, but that's the reason why also prehistoric art is so important, because back then it was pure instinct. First of all, context. We are during the Upper Paleolithic, so around 40,000 BC. There was not written language. The society was a hunter-gatherer economy, and there was no knowledge of science or even why the basic things were happening. So inside this scenario, we can easily understand how the survival elements of the nature were so important, in particular animals. And that's the reason why in the cave paintings, animals were the first subjects to be represented. By the way, in the description below you can find some links to the glossary of my website, where you can have the definition of new words that I'm using in each video. Like for example, cave painting. Caves were a natural shelter, and the walls and the ceilings inside the caves were a perfect place where our ancestors could start to draw and paint, since they were not exposed to the external environment, and because of that we talk also about parietal art. And like I said before, animals were the main subject. We don't know the real deep meaning, even if probably it was related to magic hunting reasons. What is really fascinating is that the subjects that were painted back then were mostly large wild animals like bisons, horses, deer, also some tracings of human hands or some abstract patterns, while drawings of humans were pretty rare. And this pattern is common even in populations that were very far from each other and probably they never met. For example, this is possible, the oldest known figurative art painting from over 40,000, perhaps 52,000 years old, of an unknown animal in a cave in Indonesia with a very difficult name, so sorry guys from Indonesia, is Lubang Jerusalem. And now I want to show you a section in Europe from Altamira in Spain around 36,000 years ago. We can see in both cases a wild large animal, probably a bison, and we are talking about two populations that were pretty far, Indonesia and Spain. And Altamira is just one example of the around 400 art-filled caves discovered so far, mostly actually in Spain and France. Talking about France, here we have another example from Chauvet-Pont-d'Arc, where in this cave we can see some of the best preserved figurative cave paintings in the world. It has been discovered in 1994, and it is considered one of the most significant prehistoric art sites, and UNESCO granted it World Heritage status in 2014. The scene depicts a moment that nowadays we can see just in Africa, a group of lions on the right running towards a pack of rhinos on the left. It's really interesting to notice that the lions are perfectly organized, like usually they do when they hunt, while the rhinos seem surprised. In fact, they are running in different directions. Another UNESCO site, still in France, is Losco. It was inducted into the UNESCO World Heritage Sites already in 1979. And it's amazing, in particular considering that there are more than 600 figures painted inside the cave. Now, a thing that I want really to focus on is the dimensions of these figures, because often we cannot really understand from the pictures You have to imagine that almost every figure was between 1 meter and 2 meters each, so between 3 and 6 feet. So you have to imagine a big cave filled with these beautiful animals. Another thing that I want that we consider is that back then they didn't have electricity, so the lights were not flat and diffuse like now. They were using torches, they were using fires, and because of that the fire was vibrating, and so it was making all these figures sort of shaking like almost were alive with more shades. And actually these, what we call paintings, were also sometimes carved in the rock, and because of that the shades were also more intense. Studying styles, pigments and techniques, researchers have discovered that the paintings have been drawn by a wide range of skills and ages in many generations. And this is really fascinating, in particular if we consider that those populations were nomadic. And they were not using the caves like often we think, like homes, but actually they were just temporary shelters and places for rituals and ceremonies. But they were coming back generation after generation to add more details, to add more figures. They were doing that with a purpose probably of leaving a cultural heritage for the next generations, and that's exactly what any modern artist does. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to subscribe so you can stay updated with the next one, and remember to check the links below so you can learn more about the prehistoric era, and see you soon.